Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Back Stronger. I'm Dana Brooks of the Fasig Brooks Law Offices, and I'm joined with my law partner, Jimmy Fasig, today.
Hello.
Hey, we've got a great show. We've got somebody who knows one of our law partners on today. This is a woman who is known in our community. She does so much. She's really active with her children and then all of their activities too. Carrie Roan, our law partner, knows our guest today through soccer in their community. Their children go to school together.
That's one of the things I love about this show. And one of the things I love about the community is you don't realize how many people are in your very own circle that have had these amazing comeback stories, that have overcome overwhelming odds, and that, for example, in this case, have taken the pain that they've suffered and turned it into purpose. And that's what I love. Those are the key ingredients to any great comeback story.
And Carrie Roan, she even says to our guest, she said, you know, I've known you a long time. I had no idea that this was your story. And we're talking today about Holly McPhail. A lot of people know her in the Tallahassee community. She went to school with a lot of people, but she didn't have an easy path. You know, so many people, when you see them as an adult and they're flourishing and they're doing so well and their children are active and participating, they're great members of society, you just think it was always easy for them and that it must just have been, you know, an easy path and all you have to do is, you know, show up and the world will be perfect for you, but that doesn't happen for everybody. And Holly was so brave to share with us her very deep, you know, struggles that she had as a child, and it was so hard for her because nobody believed the things that she was saying.
Well, when you look at Holly, she is so well put together. She is, you know, very articulate, intelligent, and you would look at her and think, man, I don't think that she's ever had a hard day in her life.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
And when you go through your life and everybody that you meet, it just makes me think, you never know what this person has been through. You don't ever know what kind of day this person has had. You don't know what sort of needs this person has not had met throughout their life. And it's just fascinating for me to see how so many people, even people that we know, have been able to overcome.
And a lot of times, one of the first indicators, one of the tells, is they're a helper. They're almost always very concerned with making sure other people don't struggle and making sure other people have somebody pulling them up. And she's exactly that. She was able to get some help when she needed it at a crucial period in her adolescent development because she was going down the wrong path. And that is very easy to do. You know, you start running with the wrong crowd. You start doing, you know, these things that are outside the norm. Next thing you know, you're dealing with the justice system. You're dealing with, you know, judges and law enforcement and that sort of thing. And it's real hard for most people to pull themselves out of that once they go down that path. But she found a light and she helps other people do it now.
Well, that's the crazy thing. The crazy thing is if she hadn't gone through what she's been through, she would never be able to do what she's doing now, which is giving back to the community in a way that helps others not have to go through what she's been through. I love it. I can't wait for everybody to see this.
She has got a great story. When we come back, our law partner Carrie Roan is going to do her first part of the interview with Holly McPhail, and we'll find out just exactly what her struggles were and how she found the motivation to not just get herself up and through this and come back stronger, but to help other people do it as well. So we'll be right back after this.
I recently had a new client and she suffered a mild traumatic brain injury. And she had no idea what had happened that caused her to be injured. But it turns out she had fallen into a pit at an oil change station. And it was 100% their fault. But
her injury made her not even understand
her injury, and
it
makes me so frustrated because folks that suffer concussions or mild traumatic brain injuries, it's really difficult for them to know what happened and to understand the difference in what their life was and what it is now because of the nature of their condition. And so the insurance companies need to recognize the full value of that.
Instead of taking advantage of that very unique situation.
It took her family telling her, you need to call an attorney. Her family coming with her to the appointment to say, these are the differences to get her in there, and now we're able to help her.
I love that. And we are back. We're getting ready to do the first segment of Carrie Roan's interview with Holly McPhail, and you will see all that she's been through, and then right when you think there's no hope, she pulls it out. So this is an exciting clip. Stay tuned.
Holly McPhail, thank you so much for being on the Come Back Stronger show with us today. I've known you for a while through our school because our kids go to the same school together. They go to Florida High, but I never knew that you had such an interesting and traumatic backstory and such a survivor story. Looking at you, you would never guess, especially you're so successful, you're so involved in the community, and I just would have never known. So I'm interested to hear about it.
My journey, I think kind of thinking about it, it's taken me 10 and a half years of therapy to be able to say that I'm an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse, that my journey of healing and hope really started when I was 12 after about 9 years of suffering pretty traumatic social, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse at the hands of a family member.
Oh my God.
And when I was 12, I finally had the courage to speak up and tell someone. And unfortunately, that didn't work out super great for me. It resulted in kind of being transported to another community, shunned, told to be quiet, don't let anybody else at the family know, things like that. And I think I behaved or I reacted to that in maybe any way a 12-year-old girl might, by rebelling.
I imagine so, right. That's the natural thing to do when you're shunned and gone through so much trauma. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so I found myself in a new community, acting out, got involved with the juvenile justice system.
How did that happen? Like, you were acting out how?
I was truant. I didn't really care about going to school. I didn't really care about meeting friends. Actually, if I really think about it, I was so desperate to make friends in this new community that no one knew who I was. I looked different. I spoke different. I was from a different community. I dressed differently. And the kids that kind of said, yeah, come on, be my friend. I'm going to call them the skater kids. The kids that hung out behind the Domino's Pizza smoking cigarettes in the morning before going into middle school. I just kind of fell in with them and unfortunately got involved with petty theft and drug use. The typical gateway drug starts with marijuana and kind of went on to harder things. And by the time I was 15, I was expelled from high school.
Wow. Had
been locked up in juvie. I think I had purple hair when I was locked up in juvie. Nothing against purple hair. It was gorgeous.
Right.
But I just remember this kid that was locked up, and I remember him from middle school being like, oh, that kid's totally going to go to jail at some point. And there he was, and he was like, yo, purple hair. What'd you do to get in here?
Oh, no.
And I just remember kind of at one point in my life thinking, is this what I want to do? Is this where I want to be? Yeah.
Right. And you were in high school when that happened?
Yep. I was 15 when that happened and found myself kind of just flailing around. My mother was she was dealing with some bipolar issues. I was living with my mother. I wasn't removed from her care. But kind of in that rebellious state, just finding my own, and I ended up running away because when you're told to not tell your story, when you're told that you're wrong, or when you're told that you're not worth anything, or that your parents are like, what, calling me a stupid child, or what have you gotten yourself into now, you just feel unloved.
Of course.
And I left. I ran away.
It's really sad to feel unloved as a child. I think that's one of the worst things that can happen as a kid.
Absolutely. And to live in fear as well. I mean, I think that was the hardest part of growing up in that home, was not sure if tonight was going to be another night where I had to be quiet. I had to not tell. There were nights when I had knives held to my throat. There were nights that other people were introduced into my room.
That's horrible.
I wanted to get away from all of that.
Yeah, of course. And you were at the shelter for a while after you ran away, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So one of the times I ran away, found myself living in the woods, sleeping in the woods, and I found myself over on Roberts Avenue, which is where it was called back then someplace else. It's called again today someplace else as well. And I remember sleeping in the woods and seeing that building, because I had heard I could go in there and I could get a shower. I could get a meal. I could get access to therapy.
How old were you?
15 when that happened.
And you're just by yourself in the woods?
I was by myself in the woods.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Found myself in the shelter and stayed for a couple of days under a pseudonym, actually. And then eventually did get connected. They did encourage me and connected me back to my mother, and I did follow-up therapy in what's now known as Family Place there with CCYS, and things started to change shortly thereafter. But it wasn't until I made the decision that I didn't want to live like that anymore, that I didn't want to be that way anymore.
What led to that decision? How did you arrive there?
May 18th, 1997, I overdosed. And I guess you could say I had an experience on the other side, so to speak. When I was revived, the coldness and the darkness that I felt on either side, all of a sudden on this side didn't feel so cold and dark, and I had hope. I don't know what about me changed in that moment, other than knowing I don't want to die.
It's interesting. I do a lot of these interviews, and I've talked to a couple other people that have OD'd, and one way or the other, somehow through that experience, they have found hope. That's like the key word that everybody finds in that moment when you hit rock bottom, is somehow, maybe through somebody else, maybe through yourself or whatever, but they all find hope. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. When we come back, I want to talk to you about what happened afterwards, what your recovery was like, and how you've become the person that you are today. Because I have to tell you, I know you personally, and I'm shocked to sit here and hear your story, because you would never guess. You know, you're the PTA mom, you're the soccer mom. I mean, you're a career woman. You know, I mean, you just would never guess. So thank you for being vulnerable with us, and I look forward to hearing the second half of your story when we come back.
Wow, Holly is like so many people that get those wake-up moments, but unlike a lot of them, she took it, and she was able to really change and turn her life around. What are your thoughts watching that first segment?
I just am so impressed that she found the inner strength to say, I love that she said, I made the decision that I didn't want to be that way anymore. Yeah. That is because in every comeback story, there's always a turning point that involves a decision made by the person that comes back.
Yeah. It's not somebody else. And in this instance, this young woman, she had heard from the important people in her life that she didn't matter, and that she wasn't going to be anything. The world wouldn't miss her, and no one would believe her, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how she was able to hear something and drown out that voice and hear a better one, but she was. And when we come back, you're going to hear more from Carrie's interview with Holly.
You know what's funny? When law firms advertise that they'll give a free consultation, every consultation we give is free, unless we can get you a settlement based on your injuries. Right. Every time you give me a call, it's free. I want you to give me a call. Right. You know, we're not going to charge you unless we actually get you something for your case. That's right.
You don't have to pay me anything unless I win the case. Right. And on top of that, I'm going to pay for all of the court costs and the deposition costs and medical records costs and expert opinions costs. All of that's coming out of my pocket, and if we don't win the case, then we eat those costs at no charge to you.
Right. So we don't take a case we don't believe in because it's not in our interest.
Right.
And we don't minimize or devalue your case because that's also not in our interest. Right. So it makes everything fair.
If you have a lawyer on a contingency fee, you can hire the very best lawyer.
And we are back. We're going to hear the second segment of Carrie Roan's interview with Holly McPhail and find out how she went from purple hair and petty theft and her first encounters with the criminal justice system to a leader in her community that helps other young people with struggles the same as her. So here we go.
So Holly, now you're chairwoman of CCYS, and you own your own business, Windwood Communications, right?
I do.
So how did you go from the point of ODing to where you are now? What was the catalyst? Who helped you along the way? Tell us a little bit about that.
I am so grateful to the Tallahassee community because we have a system of human services that exist. And
it's amazing.
It
really is.
Really is. And those human services exist to serve as a safety net, and that safety net caught me. I know that people fall through nets all the time, and that's really unfortunate, and I've kind of made it a little bit of my mission to help strengthen that, especially for young people. But for me, the safety nets that caught me were Capital City Youth Services, as well as Rickards High School. When people find out after I got expelled from Lincoln that I ended up graduating from Rickards, and I did graduate on time, they say, "Oh, you must have been in the IB program." Right? They look at me, they make a decision
because of the color of your skin,
right? Probably. And I'm like, no, actually, it was the dropout prevention program. So before online schooling existed, there was a computer lab in the basement at Rickards High School that I was able to get into. Awesome. And there were 3 individual teachers there that saw something in me and made me want to believe in myself. And that was Steve Larko, Rebecca Parks, and Kathy Schupfer. I have no idea where these individuals are today.
Sorry, I'm crying.
But they helped me find stuff I was good at. They believed in me. And they got me connected to resources. And by resources, I don't mean like the typical things out in the community. I was able to turn around and go from failing and being expelled to eventually getting into a program called Diversified Cooperative Training, DCT, work study, where I ended up becoming president of that club before I graduated from high school. And that led me to working in an after-school program at NIMS Middle School. Okay. And that was funded and paid for through CCYS. And I, shortly thereafter, became a peer advisor at this shelter that I had used a couple of years before. And that work it opened my eyes to advocacy. Yeah. And that when you have people who are authentic and they know what you've been through and they can help you find your voice, that really truly the world becomes your oyster. But that's where I started my path towards advocacy, and haven't really stopped ever since. I've worked in different jobs. A friend of mine describes me as an intrapreneur because in all of those different jobs I acquired a different skill set. I connected with people, and now I'm using all of that for good. The organization or the business that I own, Wynwood Communications, we focus on helping nonprofits and small businesses that have a proven track record of investing in kids build their community online and in real life. Cool. So what that looks like might be, some storytelling through social media or digital strategy, but it also might mean program development and strategic planning. I think it was that work that led to a current staff member at CCYS calling me up and saying, "Hey, come to this open house. I want you to meet some people. It's for this organization. You might not have ever heard of it, but it's called Capital City Youth Services."
You're like, well.
And I giggled.
I've heard of it.
I certainly have. And I went to the open house, and as it turns out, it was totally a board recruitment thing. Yeah. The individual who called me had no idea of my history with the organization.
Wow. Yeah.
But I walked in, and 2 of the staff members that were there remembered me from when I was 17, and I joined the board that very day. And about a year and a half later, they elected me to be their chairperson.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's been a really exciting journey. The organization's doing great things.
What is CCYS? How can people find it? And what kind of services does it provide to youth?
Ultimately, it's about CCYS helps young children in crisis. And by young, I mean ages 10 to 17. They provide guidance, shelter, and support. They have several different programs that they use to do this. The one that's most near and dear to my heart, of course, is someplace else, the crisis shelter. They also have Family Place, which provides family counseling short term, and then they'll transition you on to longer term if you need it. And then they also, since something that grew since the time I worked there and the time that I'm involved now, is the Going Places Street Outreach Program and Drop-In Center. That was a vision that we always talked about, actually, when I was there as a youth person, at saying, what would be great is if we had a drop-in center where people could come and they're not ready to commit to come into the shelter, but can we go in and get fed, get accesses to resources, take a shower? Because really quick, the other shelter, the adult shelter, that's a scary place for young kids, and they don't really need to be there. So they also, CCYS today has a drop-in center located right on its campus where you can get in those and they actually serve a little bit older. They'll go up to 24 years of age.
Oh, that's nice.
It's really great. They also have a couple of other programs in the community. SNAP is, which I've always thought of SNAP, I think of SNAP benefits. I can't tell you what SNAP means. However, it goes into the schools to help create its families and their youth working together in kind of a group counseling type sessions and settings on goal setting and de-escalation tactics, things like that. Okay. So you can call them, like if you're a family in crisis or need to learn more to see if your child might benefit, you can just call them. It's 576-6000, ask for a screen. And the other really cool thing about CCYS is that if they don't have a program that fits your exact needs, they'll also make sure to connect you with those that might.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what's on the horizon for you? What's next in your comeback story? I know you're raising children, so I know you're dedicating a lot of time to your own kids and their goals and their future, but what about just for you? What do you foresee for yourself?
I'm at that place in my business. It's a new business. It's been around for about 18 months where I have to make the decision if I want to scale or not. Like right now it's, I have my home office and I work out of that. And I realized that I started all of this so that I could be an advocate in the community and that I can be an advocate for my children. So right now what's on the horizon for me is to continue to serve the clients that I'm working with, but to really focus these last few years that my children are at home. They're now, I cannot believe it. I have a high schooler, a 9th grader, and a 6th grader. So it goes so fast, and I don't want to miss any more of it.
Yeah.
So I know it sounds strange to say I'm just going to be, but I'm just going to be. I'm going to be their mom. I'm going to be my husband's wife, and I'm going to serve the clients that I have with faithful dedication to help them tell their story.
I love
It's never about me, it's about them.
And you're just going to be at peace.
I am.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Sorry I cried. It happens. It's just very emotional. I really, like I said earlier, I really appreciate your willingness to open up, because I think a lot of people will hear your story and relate to it and hopefully, find the resources that they need through CCYS and some of the other organizations in town. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for allowing me to be here. And I think that's the courage message about coming back stronger, is that you can be down, you can be at your rock bottom. Yeah. And when you find that hope and you connect to the right resources, you can absolutely come back stronger.
Right. I love that. Thanks, Holly.
Oh, what a wonderful interview.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, what'd you get from that?
She is so awesome. Well, what I got from it is no matter what you've been through, no matter how many challenges that you face, there is hope. That was the word that she said several times. Yeah. There's always hope. And in her case, the hope, I love the strength that she showed. And I believe that the strength that comes from within her is from a deep desire to help other people. And to not, because that's what she said. Yeah. She said, her exact words were, it's not about me, it's about them. That's strength, that's power. I love this.
And there's something,
I love her.
Something special about her, that when she's down and out, she's not thinking only of herself. She knows she needs to get herself up and get well so she can help other people, and so she could be a good leader for her children and be a good participant in her family. But I'm just amazed at people who find that within themselves, especially when the world just keeps, knocking them upside the head.
It is so powerful. And one of the most powerful things that I like to do is, if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling depressed, I like to help other people.
Oh yeah.
And that always can turn my energy around.
Yeah.
And so what Holly has done is she's made it a life's endeavor, a life's mission. I just love it.
I do too, but I like that she now understands that it's okay for her to rest. And so when we get back from the next commercial break, we'll talk about that and kind of unpack a little bit of the things she shared with us. So we'll be right back after this.
I went to lunch with one of my former clients the other day, and she's doing great. She took the money from her settlement and she started her own company buying and selling vehicles, which is really cool because she was in a car crash and then needed a new vehicle. And so now she's able to help other folks out.
Most of our clients, they find that one of the most frustrating things is the dealing with the vehicle.
Oh, well, losing your car can totally disrupt your life.
You can lose your livelihood over it. If you can't get to work, or you know, what's the worst thing with our clients is we're just trying to help them get well, but if they can't get to the health care that they need, you know, that's just another setback.
One of the typical things about a comeback story is you take the pain and the struggles and the challenges that you've been through and you use that as the fire that kind of motivates you to do something good for other people.
Yeah.
And so I love that because now our client did exactly that, like literally to the T.
You know, I was listening to the second half of Holly's interview, and she talked about a couple of things. She talked about, you know, DCT and how important that was to her. But then the minute she got the opportunity to get involved in that, what did she do? She became the president. You know, it's just the same thing.
She got involved.
She got involved, but then she didn't see herself as limited because of her experience. She never, you know, let that say you don't have leadership material. Just like whenever she goes to the CCYS, they're thinking she knows nothing about it. She knows it very well. But then what happens? You know, she takes that responsibility of being on the board, and that is a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
You served for many years on the Treehouse. Yeah. We've all promoted that in our firm, but it is a responsibility if you do it the way you're supposed to, and she certainly has. So it's almost like God or the universe, you know, put her exactly where she needed to be when she needed to be there.
Well, so one of the things I always like to highlight about comeback stories that is absolutely true in this case is, in Holly's case, there were 3 people in her life that believed in her, that they showed her love, they showed her, they cared about her, and that was a pivotal element of what made her who she is today. And so I like to highlight that because it's absolutely fascinating to me as I go through my life and I try to mentor people and I try to do the best I can to give people guidance. It's fascinating to me what kind of an impact you can have on a person with just one conversation.
Yes, you can.
Just just a few kind words or a few encouraging words can absolutely change that person's trajectory of life forever.
Forever.
Which is absolutely fascinating to me.
And she could still name you these 3 people.
Oh yeah, that's right.
These 3 people. And I hope that this gets back to them, because I've had some important people in my life like that too, and I maybe didn't tell them how important they were till 30 years later or whatever, and you know, the tears that come and how great they are. And especially teachers, you know, we don't appreciate our teachers enough, and they are so important in developing our futures and the future of our children. So this has just been an incredible episode. I thank you all for joining us again. If you have someone you would like to recommend for a good Comeback Stronger show, give us a call, 777-7777, or look at our QR code and reach out to us online, marketing@facingbrooks.com. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000. Really? He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money. And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job. That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money. And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.